position of responsibility in an organization, particularly a volunteer organization, one of the skills that we have to tap into is the skill of coaching. Coaching enables us to get people to do what we need them to do, but in such a way that we're more of a facilitative role rather than a role where we're saying do this, do that, and so on. So coaching is a really important skill, and that's what this session is going to be all about. What is coaching, and then how can we help you develop the skill of coaching so that you can effectively manage in a volunteer organization. In this session, we'll take a look at what coaching is, so we'll really flesh out the concept of coaching. We'll also compare coaching with other concepts that are a little bit similar, so concepts such as mentoring and training. So we'll compare and contrast these so you can be very, very clear about what coaching is and what coaching is not. Then we'll take a look at 4 key skills that you need in order to be an effective coach. Next, we'll take a look at signs that you should be aware of so that you know whether you are coaching effectively or not. And finally, we'll wrap up the session with a little bit of self-analysis in terms of your own coaching skills. So you'll take a look at whether you are effective as a coach or not, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then what you can do to work on those weaknesses. So let's get started. In order to explore the concept of coaching and really understand what it is, I'm going to put you to work right away. I've given you a bunch of statements about coaching. What I'd like you to do is read these statements and decide if the statements are true or false. Then we'll come back and explore the statements a little bit further to pull out the key concepts about coaching. Let's take a look at these statements and see what they tell us about coaching. Statement A. A coach identifies areas for improvement by first asking inquiry-type questions to understand what the issues are. This statement is true, and here's why. Coaching is really about digging into what's going on with the people involved with a particular issue. And the best way to do this is to ask questions, lots and lots of questions. So one of the key skills in coaching is asking the right type of questions. Statement B is that the final step of each coaching interaction, so each time you meet with the person you're coaching, is to create a plan of action for that person. And this plan can be informal or formal. This statement is also true. What you want to do after each coaching session is leave the person you're coaching with concrete actions that he or she can take, and then the next time you meet, you revisit those actions and see how things went. So you always want to end all of your coaching interactions with an active step or something tangible that the person you're coaching has to do. Statement C is that coaching is action-oriented. This is true. You just have to look at the previous statement to verify this. So in coaching, you want the person you're coaching to take active steps to help himself or herself improve whatever it is needs improving. So it's always about action. Statement D is that a coach does not tell the person being coached what to do. Rather, the coach helps that person identify what needs doing. This is true. Don't worry, not all of the statements are true, but these first 4 have been. So in coaching, you're not a dictator. You don't want to say, do this, do that, do this, do that, do that. What you want to do is engage the person you're coaching in a discovery process so that he or she figures out what needs doing. The more people can figure out themselves what needs doing, the more buy-in they have for the necessity of that action. Statement E is that the overall goal of coaching is to help that person being coached to grow and become more successful. This is true. Coaching is really about helping that one person become better at what he or she does. Statement F is that a coach's main role is to give advice and instruction to the person being coached. This statement is false. Remember previously we talked about that this is not the main role of the coach. So the main role of the coach is not to be the dictator, say do this, do this, do this. The main role is to help the person being coached figure out what to do by themselves. Statement G is that a coach serves as an unbiased or outside pair of eyes on a situation or an issue. This is true, and this is one of the main things that a coach does bring to the table. The coach can be objective about a situation that the person being coached can't see clearly anymore. So that outside pair of eyes is really, really valuable to the person being coached. Statement H is that coaching is all about working together with the person being coached to find the best possible way to do something. This is true. Coaching really is a collaboration between the coach and the person being coached in order to find the best possible solution for whatever issue or situation is at hand. Statement I is that a coach should offer support and encouragement. This is true. One of the roles of a coach is to kind of be like a cheerleader and just to keep the person going even when things get really, really tough. Statement J is that coaching involves building a relationship on an ongoing basis with the person being coached. This is true. If you don't have a good relationship with the person you're coaching, if he or she doesn't trust you, then your coaching just isn't going to work. So relationship building really is a core skill in coaching. Statement K is that a coach should tell the person he or she is coaching exactly what to do. We've covered this, but I am going to repeat it and stress it because it's really, really important. So this statement is not true. It's false. And never, never, never as a coach get into a situation where you are saying, do this, do that, do this. That is not your job. Statement L is that a coach should not challenge the thinking and the viewpoint of the person he or she is coaching. This one is false. One of the jobs of a coach is actually to challenge the assumptions that the person being coached has. Because often when we get trapped in our own assumptions and can't see other perspectives or other assumptions, that's when we get into difficulties. So a coach's job is to say, well, is that really the case? What are you thinking here, and is that actually what is correct? So challenge assumptions, obviously do it diplomatically, but challenge those assumptions. Statement M is that a coach should give the person he or she is coaching specific, detailed, and constructive feedback. This is true, and this is another core job of the coach, providing feedback. Statement N is that the person being coached is responsible for taking action. This is true. Don't get stuck as a coach saying, okay, well, I'll do this and you do this. It really is all about the person being coached taking all of the action upon himself or herself. So the action is done by the person being coached, not the coach. Statement O is that the coach works from behind the scenes, and the person being coached is the one who's front and center and has all the attention on him or her. This statement is true. Being a coach really does mean that you take a step back and the center of attention is the person being coached, not you. So you have to be comfortable or become comfortable having that less central role in situations and issues. So step back and the focus goes on the person being coached. Statement P is that coaching is a collaboration between the coach and the person being coached. This is true. And it goes back to an earlier statement that coaching is all about working together, and another earlier statement that it's about building a relationship. So coaching is collaborative. So it is a collaboration between you and the person you're coaching. If that collaboration isn't there, that's actually a step that you have to backtrack and put in place before you can move forward with that coaching relationship. Statement Q is that it is the coach's job to always bring the conversation back to the end goal. So with the person you're coaching, decide what your end goal is and always bring the person back to that end goal no matter how many tangents the person wants to take. And this, of course, is true. One of your jobs is to bring people back. Here's where we're focused. Here's the end goal. Let's focus on this and forget all the other noise and all the other background stuff that's going on. So bringing that person you're coaching back into focus on that goal is your job. With these statements, what we've hopefully been able to do for you is to clarify the concept of coaching. So coaching is many, many things. It is very collaborative. It's based on relationship. It's based on helping a person to help himself or herself, not doing things yourself. So it's a very interesting role to take with someone, and it's a very effective management tool, particularly in a volunteer environment. There's one other piece of clarification around the concept of coaching that we have to do before we move on to the specific skills of coaching. Coaching is sometimes confused with concepts that are somewhat similar but also a little bit different. And so we'll take a look at these concepts just to further clarify and distinguish what coaching is versus these other concepts. In Activity 2, I've given you 6 definitions. What I'd like you to do is match the concepts with the definitions that go with them. See if you can figure out how coaching is different from all of these other concepts. Definition A is to share experience and advice. This is mentoring. Mentoring is all about someone who has more experience sharing that experience with someone who has less experience. So we often see mentoring relationships in business, for example, where a senior member of an organization will take on a junior member of an organization as a mentor. Definition B is to impart knowledge of or skill in. This is teaching. We've all experienced a teacher-student relationship. We've had that all the way through our schooling, at university, at college, and so on. So teaching really is about the transfer of knowledge and skill from one person to another person. Definition C is to guide, support, and encourage. This is coaching. We've already explored this in quite a lot of depth. So coaching is very much a behind-the-scenes encouraging and supporting concept. Definition D is to command unconditionally. This is dictating. I put this one in here because sometimes people actually do confuse coaching with dictating, because in the sports arena we often see coaches yelling at players and saying, do this, do that, and so on. But that's really just what happens in public. There's a whole piece behind the scenes on coaching that is very different. So don't confuse that dictatorial order giving that you might see with professional sports teams with what coaching really is. So dictating is giving orders, people can't say no. Coaching gives people a lot more choice. Definition E is to handle, direct, govern, or control. This is managing. Managing is really about taking direct responsibility for the actions of others. This is very different from coaching. And in coaching, remember, the person being coached has a lot of the responsibility. In managing, the ultimate responsibility sits with the manager. Definition F is to develop or form the habit of something in someone. This is training. So for example, you might hire a personal trainer if you want to get in better shape. And the personal trainer will make sure you get out running every day, make sure you do 50 sit-ups every day, and so on. So it's very different, once again, from a coaching role, because coaching is not about habit formation. It's about helping you grow and develop. Training really is about forming habits and getting a regular routine for something in place. Hopefully you now have a clear idea about what coaching is and also what it is not. Now we'll move on to take a look at the actual skills that go into being a good coach. Probably the most important skill when it comes to coaching is the skill of asking questions. And this is actually not quite as simple a skill as you might think. You might be thinking, oh, we ask questions every day. What's so hard about that? But when you're coaching, you have to strategically choose which type of question you use in order to go after which type of information or which end result. So we'll take a look at the different types of questions that you can use as a coach in order to get the person you're coaching where they need to be. The first type of question you can use is an open question. This is also called an open-ended question. An open question allows you to gather whatever information the person answering chooses to share. So it kind of puts the responsibility on the person answering to put anything out there that he or she thinks is important. Here are some examples of open questions. What do you think about something? Why did you do something, or why do you feel something? Tell me about something. And describe something. So the person answering has a lot of different choices, and you can kind of get an idea of what's going on in the person's head based on what he or she chooses to share with open questions. As a coach, there are two main situations when you'll use open questions. The first one is at the beginning of a coaching interaction. Open questions are just really good for getting the ball rolling, getting the person to start to think about what's going on and what the issues are. The second situation in which you'll use open questions are situations in which you have no idea what's going on. So you really have no way to direct the conversation, so you're going to leave it really open with an open question, and then you'll start to sort through the information you get to start to figure out what actually is going on. Closed questions are questions that give you a very specific or very detailed answer. And there are three types of closed questions that you can use. The first type are called short answer questions. These are questions that have an answer that's just 1 or 2 words long. The second type of closed question is a yes-no question, and the answer here is very obviously either yes or no. And the final type of closed question is a choice question. So the person answering has to choose A or B, coffee or tea, chocolate or vanilla, for example. As a coach, there are two main situations in which you'll choose to use a closed question. The first type of situation is when you just want to verify something. So you have a pretty good idea of what the answer is, but you just want to double or triple check that you do have the correct information. The second situation is that you just want a very specific piece of information. You don't want any background information or details or anything, you just want one specific piece of information. In that situation, you'll also use a closed question. As a coach, you need to be very strategic about your question choices. So you need to know exactly why you're going to choose an open question in this situation versus a closed question in this other situation. What I'd like you to do is think of a coaching interaction that you had recently, either in your organization or in someone's personal life. Think about 3 open questions that you either asked in that situation or that you could have asked. And then think about why you could have asked or did ask each of those 3 questions. And then do the same thing for closed questions. What are 3 closed questions that you did ask or could have asked in that situation, and why did you choose or could you have chosen those specific questions? So for all the questions that you ask as a coach, really think about why you're asking that question and how is it helping you be a better coach. The next skill set that's really important in coaching is the skill set of active listening. Active listening is simply the things that we do to let a speaker know that we're listening to him or her. So here are some of those things. The first very obvious thing is we make eye contact with the speaker. And that tells them, hey, I'm really listening to you. The next thing that we do is we nod our head. Yes, I understand you. No, I don't understand you. Yes, I agree with you. No, I disagree with you. We also restate key ideas. So we'll say, okay, here's what I think I heard you say, or did I hear you correctly? If I've understood you, here's what you said. We'll also do something called use interjections. Interjections are just words that we put in. They don't really mean anything, but they just once again say, hey, I'm listening to you. So we'll say things like, really? Oh, wow, that's interesting. So these are interjections. The next thing we'll do is we'll actually have a facial expression that says, hey, I'm listening to you. We won't have a facial expression that says, hey, I'm bored, stop talking, but we'll have a facial expression that says, hey, keep talking, this is really neat. The next thing that we do for active listening is we actually lean forward slightly with our posture. So we're leaning in to say, hey, I really want to catch everything that you're saying. So these are just some of the pieces that go together to make active listening. And active listening, as I said before, is really important when you're coaching. The next skill set that's important for coaching is the skill of clarifying and summarizing. Even though we put them together, clarifying and summarizing are a little bit different. So let's take a look at each one. First of all, clarifying is something we do when we just want to make sure that we have exactly understood what someone said. So we might ask a question or we might restate something. So we might ask, could you tell me what you mean by such and such? Or I didn't quite get that, could you repeat that and tell me in a little bit more detail? Or we might restate, so if I heard you correctly, here's what you said. And there's a few other different phrases, but with clarifying, what we're really going after is making sure that we've understood what's been said. With summarizing, what we're doing is we're pulling together the speaker's key points, and we're saying, okay, here's the most important stuff of everything that you said. So we might use phrases like to summarize or to pull it all together, or your key ideas, if I've understood them, are. So these are things we do to summarize, to pull together the most important points out of everything that the speaker has said. And the final skill set that's really useful when we're coaching someone is the skill set of suggesting. Remember, coaching is about giving someone ideas or helping them find the best way to do something. So we're not telling. What we want to do is give advice or suggest. Try this, try that, maybe this will work, maybe this will work. So there are certain phrases or sentences we can use in order to suggest to the person we're coaching. So we might say, have you thought about doing such and such? Or what about doing such and such? Why don't you think about trying such and such? These are all ways to suggest rather than tell when we're coaching someone. There are other skills that go into coaching, but these 4 that we've covered are the most important ones. So we've covered the skill of asking questions strategically, so picking open versus closed questions, the skill of active listening, the skill of clarifying and summarizing, and the skill of suggesting. So these are all communication skills that really help us coach a person effectively. In addition to using the skills that we've talked about in order to be an effective coach, you also have to have a level of awareness, or you have to be attuned to whether your coaching is actually working or not. So you have to be able to judge, okay, this coaching interaction is working, or you know what, it's not working and I have to change something. So in order to be aware of whether your coaching is effective or not, there are certain things that you can look for and be aware of that tell you, okay, yes, it's working, or no, it's not. In Activity 4, I've given you a list of signs that you may or may not see in a coaching interaction. What I'd like you to do is read each of these statements or each of these signs and decide whether this is a sign that your coaching is effective or a sign that, hey, your coaching is not working and it is actually ineffective. So give it a try. Statement A is you have a good discussion about the issues. This is a sign that your coaching is actually effective. If you've got really good, fluid, in-depth discussions going on the issues, that means your coaching is working. Statement B says that you do more listening than talking. This is another sign that your coaching is effective. You want the person you're coaching to talk through things, come up with the ideas, make suggestions, and so on, rather than those coming from you. So if there's more listening on your part than talking, your coaching is effective. Statement C is that there are long silences. A little bit of silence in a coaching interaction is okay. That's just a sign that someone is thinking or processing. So don't get panicked if there is some silence in your coaching interaction. However, if you get long periods of silence, that means, hey, the thinking process has stopped and the whole interaction pretty much has hit an impasse. So what you want to do in these situations is think of really good questions. So go back to your strategic question making and question asking and come up with a question that's going to get that thinking and that processing going again. So long silences, maybe something is ineffective and you want to make a change. Statement D is there's no eye contact between you and the person you're coaching. So you guys are not looking at each other. Maybe you're looking over the person's shoulder or down at the ground or over their head. This is not a good sign. So this is a sign that probably your coaching is ineffective. When people don't make eye contact, there's a few different things that might be going on. Maybe there's no level of trust. Okay, so you have to go back and say, okay, do we have a good solid relationship here? Maybe the person is not engaged. Maybe they're bored. Maybe they don't think you can help them. So if you see that lack of eye contact, take a look at what's going on and see what you need to change. Statement E is that you ask a lot of questions. This is very obviously a sign that your coaching is effective. Okay, one of your main roles, as we've talked about before, is to be the questioner in these interactions. So asking a lot of questions is a good thing. Statement F says that the person you're coaching says something is a good idea, but then doesn't commit to any action to put that good idea into place. This is a sign that your coaching is ineffective. Remember back to the beginning of this session when we talked about one of the goals of coaching is to get action. So coaching is all about having some next steps or some action take place on the part of the person you're coaching. So if there is no action step, then your coaching is ineffective and you need to go back and look at how you can get the person you're coaching to take action. Statement G is that you give feedback, not judgment. This is a sign that your coaching is effective. Being a coach means giving the person you're coaching very objective feedback or an objective reflection of how things look or how things are. When you start to put judgments on things, that's where you lose your objectivity. So keep the judgment out of it and you will be effective as a coach. Statement H is that the person you are coaching arrives at a practical, achievable action plan. This is a sign, once again, that your coaching has been effective. We've talked a lot about this, but I will repeat it because it is really important. Coaching someone is all about getting action. And so if you can get someone to put a plan of action into place that's realistic and specific and achievable, you've achieved one of the main goals of coaching. Statement I is that the person you're coaching just brushes off your suggestions. Oh yeah, that's good, but, or oh, I've thought about that, but, and they just don't commit to doing anything. This is a sign that your coaching is ineffective. There are a few things that could be going on here. First of all, the person you're coaching could simply not want to change or not be comfortable with the idea of taking any action. Or they may not be committed to the coaching process. Or they may simply think, well, that actually isn't a good idea, but I'm going to be polite and say it is a good idea. So if you get this reaction where they kind of brush off a suggestion, do a little bit more probing, use your questions, and figure out what's really going on. Just to recap this section, being aware of whether your coaching is working or not is a skill in and of itself. So use the statements or the signs that we've talked about to really be able to gauge whether your coaching interaction is effective or not. And if it's effective, that's great, keep doing what you're doing. If it's ineffective, go back and figure out what you need to change or tweak so that it can become effective. Now that we've looked at the concept of coaching, the skills of coaching, and how to gauge whether your coaching is effective or not, it's time to take a look at yourself as a coach. So using the information presented in this session, just do a little bit of self-analysis and figure out what are your strengths when it comes to coaching and what are your weaknesses. So take a few minutes just to jot some ideas down. Now that you've determined what your strengths are as a coach and what your weaknesses are as a coach, we're going to do a little bit of coaching of you. Taking those weaknesses, put together a 3-step action plan that you can do personally to improve your coaching. So to focus on those weaknesses and turn them into strengths. So in your action plan, keep things very simple and just 3 steps. What are 3 things that you can work on in order to improve those weaknesses? Here's a brief example. So if you determine that your weakness is actually in the skill set of questioning, one of the things you can do is when you're interacting with people on an everyday basis, just be very conscious of the questions you use when you're talking to them. Start to analyze those questions and realize or be aware of whether your questions are open questions or closed questions. Think about why you use those particular questions and what information you got when you did use those questions. So that might be one step in your action plan. Here's another possibility. Let's say you determined your weakness when it comes to coaching is active listening. What you can do or what you can put in your action plan is that every day you're going to be very conscious of being an active listener. So you can make yourself aware of whether you're making eye contact, whether you're nodding your head, whether you're using interjections, and so on. So these are just a couple of ideas of what you can put into your action plan so that you can work on your own skill set when it comes to coaching. I'll just wrap up this session with a brief reminder about why coaching is important. Whenever you're in a position of responsibility, one of your main jobs is to get people to do the best job that they can possibly do. And coaching is the way to make this happen. The better you are at helping people grow both personally and professionally, the more successful you yourself will be in that position of responsibility.